Here we are doing a little live. We're going to talk about UFC 304 Manchester. Some of the epic matches had put on for that particular card. On top of the fact that they have a weird time zone that is playing in that particular part of the world, which I think is really the interesting aspect of this, right? We got Belal Muhammad, 10-fight winning streak versus a 13-fight winning streak against Leon Edwards. We're going to talk about that. We're also going to talk about Jon Jones fighting at UFC 309 or 307 somewhere in the New York card of November in late 2024 of this year. What is the implications of that, considering that Curtis Blaydes is going to fight Tom Aspinall, the current interim champion, for the interim championship in Manchester at UFC 304. What's going to happen with that? What would happen if, let's say, he finishes his fight very early? And by the way, that's not very implausible for any of that to happen. You got to take into consideration this, right? Tom Aspinall finishes his fights very early. Now, why is that important for me to bring up? He could literally overlap Jon Jones up until November. In other words, he could get a knockout and then jump back somewhere in the fall time, because obviously his fight is going to be in July. That Manchester card is going to be in July. So he could jump right in somewhere in a September card. And where would that be? Who knows? But then you would have to ask the question, who is the real world champion in terms of being undisputed? Now, obviously, Tom Aspinall is not currently undisputed, but you got to ask yourself how much of that really matters right now, considering that Jon Jones does not want to fight Tom Aspinall for whatever reason. Maybe because he just feels that he was focused on one fight. He's been focused on Stipe for a very long time, and as a result, he felt like taking a U-turn in terms of fighting somebody like Tom Aspinall would be inconducive to his original plan. And also, you got to take into consideration, is this one of those situations where perhaps he was training specifically for Stipe in a kind of style that Stipe can offer? So all of these things are really important to understand, because it's bad enough that the UFC doesn't have a real undisputed heavyweight champion, considering that Francis Ngannou left with the belt, never defending it, never having to fight Jon Jones, and never having to know what the actual potential of that matchup would be, or to really know who we can crown the undisputed heavyweight champion of the world. Or it could be just one of those situations where this is literally the pure definition of mixed martial arts, meaning that anybody at any time can win. And in that same similar circumstances, anybody at any time can become world champion. So it's really important to understand these particular factors at hand. It's very confusing for the UFC to not have a real heavyweight champion, but at the same time, understood the business of this last couple of years, just reading about different subjects on the matter. I think that it's really important to understand that of unpredictability, the world that Tom Aspinall loses to Curtis Blaydes, that creates even more of a confusion in the whole entire circle of the heavyweight division. Not only that, it will really show you the notion that I was just talking about for the past couple of minutes, which is that the uncertainty of this sport shows that the belts, the pound for pound #1 rankings, don't belong to anybody. And Leon Edwards was famous for quoting that particular phrase when he knocked out Usman. What did he say? He said something along the lines, that the belt belongs to nobody or the pound for pound championship belongs to nobody, something to that extent. The point is, he's right. It belongs to absolutely nobody, and that includes all titles across all divisions, and it's literally playing out right in front of your face. We're going to talk more about UFC 304 in just a second. Let's go into Tyson Fury and Usyk. To be quite honest with you, this is going to be a quick one with the Tyson Fury and the Usyk subject, because there wasn't really much to take out of that particular press conference. Now, I don't know why they had the press conference done outside. If you've noticed, there was some serious problems with the microphone and really making it just a little bit harder to understand, or really just a bad technical, just a lot of bad technical mishaps that this press conference had. But nonetheless, the Tyson Fury and Usyk presser can be summed up into this: let your fists do the talking. You see, we didn't expect the flamboyant, the extravagant, the well-articulated Tyson Fury, and we didn't see any of the Ukrainian translators have to work really hard to dig in deep in terms of trying to understand the message that Usyk is trying to convey and then trying to convey it back to English. We didn't see none of that. Also, a lot of people are taking a lot of they're sort of taking this aspect of Tyson Fury not looking into the eyes of Alexander Usyk like as if it was meaningful. I'm going to tell you guys none of that was meaningful, and I'm going to tell you why right now. The reason why none of that is meaningful, considering that Tyson Fury did not look into his eyes, it's not because he's scared of him. It's not because he doesn't want to look in his eyes because he doesn't want to get psyched out or anything like that. I'm just going to tell you flat out, none of that has anything to do with fear. It is based on the fact that he knows that is what it takes to win this fight. Pragmatism. Not extravagancy, not complacency, not the circus sideshow that his father had put on, which, by the way, I will admit, though distasteful at the same time, quite entertaining. None of those things matter. What matters in this particular instance is pragmatism. What needs to be done? The body that is in front of you, not the mind, not the eyes, not the verbal exchange that will really scare some people. I'm going to tell you, some people are afraid of verbal exchanges. They don't like to be in arguments. And I ask myself, why? They can't do anything to you now. Do arguments lead to violence? 100% they do. You talk enough trash to somebody, you talk about someone's family, you talk about someone's significant other, you talk about someone's kid. Violence can happen as a reprisal of what you say. However, for the most part, within a press conference, within a controlled environment, none of that matters. So that is the reason why Tyson Fury did not decide to look into the eyes of Alexander Usyk. And a lot of you are saying he's afraid, he's scared, he doesn't want to look into his eyes, or this and that. Well, it's easy to say that the only people that say this are people that have never fought before, but surprisingly, a lot of people who say this also, from what I read, at least from my own anecdotal experience of my friends online, there's guys that have fought both boxing and MMA, or just boxing in and of itself, or some guys who just fought MMA. Nonetheless, experienced fighters that are saying this. He's scared. But I was going to say the reason why you say this is because you've never fought before, but here we are. We got guys that have fought before that are saying Tyson Fury is scared. But I am in a different opinion that pragmatism is really what will win this fight. And what do I mean by pragmatism? Meaning that the sensationalization of trash talking, of bravado, of all these things. None of that matters. It's to be done in the technical aspects of this fight. Using your jab, your distance, and not only that, your foot speed and your physical attributes as Tyson Fury. That is what is important to win this fight. Not the trash talk, not the entertainment value that the Saudis are going to bring, even though as great and as illustrious as that is. None of that matters. What matters, by the end of the day, is what you do inside that ring and how you perform inside that ring. And I think Tyson Fury is so locked in that a lot of people really don't understand what they are looking at. So that's all there is really to take a look at with Tyson Fury and the Alexander Usyk presser. What I can say, though, is that you guys should take a look at my prediction videos that I had dropped on my video and live section regarding the Tyson Fury and Usyk fight. But everything else that I really have to react on with their press conference, you could rewind back and listen to everything that I just said from the very beginning regarding Tyson Fury and Usyk. Now, back to UFC 304. Manchester. Oops. There we go. Manel Kape taking on Muhammad Mokaev. That's going to be an interesting matchup. Obviously, when Manel Kape came into the UFC, he had a few losses, right? It was like, I think, the third fight to where he had one final shot at the UFC, and then he finally won. In other words, what I'm trying to say about Manel Kape and in relationship to Muhammad Mokaev, there's a bit of some vulnerability on both of them where you can sort of draw a certain conclusion that this is going to be a very tough fight for both men. For that particular fight, I see the wrestling as sort of the benefactor to the victory of, let's say, Muhammad Mokaev. I think that's where this fight is ultimately going to be won for Muhammad Mokaev. Belal Muhammad versus Leon Edwards. A long time coming. Both of these men have a very similar story. And by the way, I'm not really going to get much of the kicks and the punches for this particular video. I will do that sometime down the road. Or if it somehow just slips up and I just have to talk about the technical efficiency of one guy over the other, or the technical deficiency over one guy or over the other, that's just how it's going to be. But rest assured, let's talk about storylines first and foremost. And by the way, don't forget to hit that like button on this channel right now as you are watching me. So, hit that like button. It's free. You don't have to pay anything. You don't have to do anything other than just hit that like button right there. If you could kindly please. So, both of these men have a very similar story in that they both had a long winning streak. Very similar to Marvin Hagler. I compared Leon Edwards to Marvin Hagler at some point of his career. I also compare Belal Muhammad in literally that same trajectory as a result. So here's something you got to understand. This is the story of the underdogs. One is champion. Hold up, bro. Who is the freaking guy, man? Haha. Shout outs to who is this freaking guy, man, that just commented right now. Hola. Hola to you as well. Let me know where you guys are tapped in from as I explain to you why Belal Muhammad and Leon Edwards are the two greatest underdog stories that are going to clash with each other in this particular event for UFC 304. Because for a long time, they've been deemed as boring, uninteresting, considering that we are living in the Conor McGregor era where it just seems like as if skills don't really matter anymore. They do in a certain extent, but it has to be a combination of skill mixed in with personality. And unfortunately, Belal Muhammad And Leon Edwards in particular just did not have that. And by the way, what's really interesting about that, if I was the manager of Belal Muhammad or Leon Edwards, I swear to you, I would know how to spin this. Now, of course, every guy says they know how to spin things or this and that. They know how to make people look good. They know how to promote. Everybody is a great promoter. Everybody is a great rapper. Everybody is a great entertainer. Well, I'm going to let you judge for yourself as I tell you the reasons why I think they would be marketable and how I would do it. For one, Belal Muhammad is an Arab-American Muslim fighter. And let me tell you where the problematic aspect of that is. You see, he's not American enough for the Americans, nor is he Arab or Middle Eastern enough for people overseas. And that right there is a promotional problem. On top of that, Belal Muhammad is a very normal human being. There's nothing extravagant about him. There's nothing unusual or unique about him. And I'm not saying this to knock him in any way. He is literally a Midwestern American wrestler from Chicago. This is the reality of Belal Muhammad. Oh, what is going on here? As you guys are watching, we are witnessing a little police raid right here. What is going on here? Let's see here. All right. So just wanted to kind of throw that in there. Again, this is why you should like and subscribe to my show, because you never know what is going to happen as we are doing these lives, as we are doing this content. And let's go back to it. So Belal Muhammad is not really the most interesting figure in MMA because of these two factors that I had just mentioned. You guys ever seen the old school movie that Jennifer Lopez did where she depicted the Mexican singer Selena? Her father in one scene said something to the extent of, well, we're Mexican Americans. We're not Mexican enough for the Americans, and we're not American enough for the Americans. We have to be more American than the Americans, and we have to be more Mexican than the Mexicans. And it is a very confusing and a very exhausting endeavor to get into. Right or wrong? That's where Belal Muhammad is at. He's not Middle Eastern or Muslim enough for the Muslims overseas with the likes of Khabib and the likes of Khamzat, which, by the way, all those guys have a marketable factor to them that Belal Muhammad just does not. You see, Belal Muhammad doesn't have cool hats like Khabib does, right? Belal Muhammad doesn't have a Chechnyan dictator that hangs out with him that gives him Mercedes Benzes or this and that. No, he's neither of these things. He's just a normal American kid from Chicago. What did my man here write? He says, who is this freaking guy, man? It makes sense. Dana White wants these guys to show out for the camera rather than respect them for being themselves, which could mean being humble rather than acting like an ass for the world. Yes, that is absolutely correct. You're spot on with your comment on that. And again, this is the reason why Belal Muhammad is in the position that he's at, getting all these winning streaks and never getting a title shot as a result. Here's another thing. If Belal Muhammad loses this fight, it's going to be back of the line for him. And guess what? For Leon Edwards, if he loses this fight, it's no different for him as well. He'll be set back on the line because, quite frankly, he's not an exciting person, but he is. And I'm about to tell you exactly how I could make them more interesting. I'm going to tell you right now. If I was Belal Muhammad, I got to be honest with you guys. I would tell him to play the bad guy role. You see, right now, Belal Muhammad is a good guy. And he is a good guy. This is real. Everything about this guy's story is real. Let me tell you something about Belal Muhammad that a lot of people don't know outside of the MMA circles. So his current coach, by the way, who is a former PFL champion, was also his wrestling coach in high school. When he left high school, his wrestling coach in high school became his MMA coach. His MMA coach, the former PFL champion, became a Muslim convert through the dawah of Belal Muhammad. What did this brother write here? Right. Uh, Timmy. Baldo says Timmy. Okay, I don't know what you mean by that, Baldo, but if you care to elaborate a little more, feel free to do so, my man. But be respectful, because a few times I've had to not curse people out, but let's just say I had to put some people on blast in here for being disrespectful, but hey, that's the way it is. So, this right here is marketable for Belal Muhammad. Okay, he had a wrestling coach that is now his training partner and his head coach in MMA, and was also a Muslim convert. But on the side of that, he also has to play the bad guy role, because let's be honest, most Middle Eastern fighters, and I could say this because obviously I'm as Middle Eastern as they come, so I gotta tell you, you gotta play the bad guy role. This is what the American audience wants. This is what the worldwide audience wants out of you. You're not always gonna be the bad guy. Obviously, when you see Khabib, Islam, and Khamzat fight in Abu Dhabi and other Muslim territories, guess what? They're not the bad guys. They are the good guys, and they are literally the baby face of the region that they are fighting for. But then it feeds into propaganda. Who is that freaking guy man said? By the way, that's his nickname. I'm not saying that to be disparaging or anyway. That's literally the man's screen name. Okay, so you're saying that that plays into the propaganda, right? Yes, it does. Now, that right there is a macroscopic problem. Okay, but the microscopic problem that we are experiencing right now is the fact that Belal Muhammad is not exactly the most marketable guy. So yes, does it feed into propaganda? Yes. But you know what? I'm going to tell you this, a WWE story right now. And before I get into after I get into this WWE story, I'm going to tell you how Leon Edwards can become marketable himself. Okay, so this WWE story. You know who was one of the biggest bad guys ever in WWE's history? He had a very short career in the WWE. His name was Muhammad Hassan. He played an Arab American villain in the WWE. Okay? And by the way, this was around 2005. Unfortunately, this role that he had played garnered a lot of heat. You got to remember, this was in 2005 during the War on Terror era, during the time of when the Iraq invasion had happened 2 years in. On top of that, there was a terrorist attack that had happened on July 7th in London, if you guys remember. And as a result, they had to kill off the Muhammad Hassan character. And by the way, the Muhammad Hassan character in the WWE wasn't even an Arab. He was an Italian guy playing an Arab. His real name, the Muhammad Hassan WWE character, was Mark Capone. Now, I think he had some Arab in him. I'm not sure, but let's just be honest. The guy was an Italian man, and he didn't live the Arab culture. And I can confidently say that he wasn't of a Muslim background whatsoever. So what happened? The plan was for him to go and win the belt against Batista, who was the WWE champion at the time. But because of the July 7th terrorist attack, they had to kill off his character, and as a result, The Undertaker symbolically killed him or unalived him in what I believe was the Great American Bash pay-per-view. That was a pay-per-view that was just right before SummerSlam, so somewhere in July. So they had to go kill off that character. Bottom line, the WWE was going to give him the belt because they felt that, you know what, we could trust this guy to be champion. He garners a lot of heat. He was a great villain, great at his job of being a villain and depicting himself as such. And guess what? It led to a great match against The Undertaker, but unfortunately, they had to kill him off before they could bring him back to go and fight Batista for the world title. That was their original plan. So again, propaganda or not, It is the issue of Bilal Muhammad's lack of trying to compel people into watching him. But again, as a hardcore and as somebody that loves the sport, I don't care for that. But sometimes it's almost like a necessary evil that needs to be done in order to accomplish this one thing. Now, Leon is going to win, Teddy Evans said. Well, you know what? I got to be honest with you, man. This is going to be a tough fight for Bilal Muhammad, only because of what I seen in their Apex fight originally. If you've seen what happened, obviously it ended with an eye poke. Leon Edwards was very heartbroken. On top of that, it was one of those situations where we didn't want to see it end like that. We wanted to see a definitive result, and perhaps maybe in Manchester we're going to see that. So now, let's go on with Leon Edwards. I'm going to tell you how Leon Edwards could literally promote himself at a higher level. Okay, so here it goes. Leon Edwards' dad, you guys know, was a drug dealer and a gun runner from Jamaica. That alone right there can really garner a certain level of attention that you really need to market yourself. Let me tell you something, man. If Leon Edwards was a UK drill rapper, for sure this guy would sell millions of records and get a whole bunch of views on YouTube if he was a rapper. Just based on the fact that he has a dad that was a drug lord, a gun runner, and everything of that particular nature. So he has to play into that. Hey, my dad was a gangster, this and that. But just like Bilal Muhammad, he's not going to want to do that. You see, I got to tell you, from the California side of things, you guys know that this is the gangbang capital of the world. There's a lot of gangsters out here in California, a lot of gang members, from the Sureños to the Norteños to the Bloods, the Crips, and everything in between. And then you got the Armenians, and then you got Arabs, and then you got a whole bunch of different gangs that you probably didn't know existed in California. Nonetheless, in this particular world, there's a lot of people that are ashamed of that particular notion. They got Armenian gangs too. Who is that freaking guy said? Yeah, they're called the Armenian Power. As a matter of fact, let me tell you, let me not get on the, what do you call it? Get on a tangent here, but let me just explain this real quick. So, you know, Pop Smoke, the famous New York rapper, he got killed out here. And the reason why, I really should stop saying that. I heard that it's bad to say that on this particular channel only because it somehow, you know, triggers certain algorithms. But nonetheless, understand this, right? Pop Smoke, the famous rapper from New York, he got killed out here in LA. There it is again. I said that word. I shouldn't say that. Okay, he got unalived out here in LA by the Armenians. Not directly by the Armenians. He was unalived by Crips that were hired by the Armenians. Now, why did the Armenians feel compelled to go after Pop Smoke the rapper to his untimely demise? He borrowed a car from them, and because he didn't understand the gang politics of LA and California, he decided to take that car and ship it to New York. Because he thought, who are these Armenian guys? These are probably just soft Middle Eastern guys. I could walk all over him. And by the way, I've had experience living in the East Coast as well. I can tell you, a lot of gangsters out there, they literally believe that they're the only gangsters in the world, which is really a funny notion if you think about it, right? They truly believe that there's nobody else harder than them in terms of racial group. Let's just be honest about that, right? So if you know, the majority of the tough gangs out there in the East Coast are usually black gangs or Puerto Rican gangs. So make of that as you will. So they think that they're the only people in the world that are in part of that world. So guess what? Lo and behold, the Armenians said, oh, we're going to do something about this. So they went and called the Crips and told them to go roll up at Pop Smoke's Airbnb in the Hollywood Hills And that was the story from there. Obviously, you guys know the rest if you know enough about Pop Smoke's life. So that's what it is. You have to be very careful in this part of the world. But again, I didn't want to get off the tangent. I was just trying to say that the majority of people that live that gangster life, they're ashamed of it. So Leon Edwards is no different than that. He's not going to exploit the fact that his dad was this gang lord from Jamaica, even though that would be very marketable for him as a rapper, let alone as a UFC fighter, and let alone as a UFC champion. So that's what you got with Belal Muhammad and Leon Edwards. They don't want to step out of character in order for them to somehow gain a certain attention. They're not that type of guys. Will it help? Yes. But you can only help yourself. And if you're not willing to do that, then that's just what it is. I guess you're just okay with making a little less money. And personally, I'm okay with that. I'm okay with you being yourself. But as somebody that understands how hard the fight business is and how hard it is to make money in that particular world, man, you got to make the most of it. Colby Covington sort of understands that. And you've seen that a few times where he broke character when he talked to certain people in the streets, only for him to sort of say, hey, you know what? I only do that to try to garner attention because it's what makes money. And speaking of money, Paddy Pimblett, another cash cow of the UFC, right? He has a fight with Bobby Green. A great step up, by the way. I'm really curious to see if Paddy Pimblett can use his jiu-jitsu to nullify the striking of Bobby Green. Now, here's what's really interesting about Bobby Green's particular style. He fights with his hands down. What a lot of you don't know about fighting with your hands down is that you don't see the shots coming, especially if you are the type of fighter that throws straight shots rather than looping and hooking shots. So I'm curious to see how Paddy Pimblett is going to implement his jiu-jitsu as well as his striking defense with, in my personal opinion, a better striker than Paddy Pimblett. But again, a step up for Paddy Pimblett nonetheless. You see, at a certain point, you got to ask yourself, when is Paddy Pimblett going to have a step up? And finally, he now has. But once he gets through this particular test, what is going to be next for him? And that right there is going to be interesting to find out what he gets, whether he wins or he loses this fight. I'll give you some particular scenarios here. If Paddy wins this fight, I could see him getting moved up to fight somebody, let's say like Benoit Saint-Denis, or maybe the levels of thus at some point the brother has to move up, right? This is a UFC. They can't be giving you journeyman matchups, can they? So if you win against Bobby Green, that's what you're going to have to face. If you lose against Bobby Green, I'll just say it simply flat out. They're going to put him back into the Jared Gordons of the world. Not necessarily Jared Gordon in particular, but within that same level of competition. That particular setting of, let's say, breaking into the top 15, not really within the top 15, maybe somewhere in the middle of top 15 to top 10. That's where they're going to send Paddy if he loses his fight. But if he wins this fight, they're going to send him to have some of the toughest matchups that you could possibly face at the 155 division. By the way, the most stacked division in the world. And when he does get through that, when and if he does get through that, here's something you got to understand that Paddy needs to do. He needs to change his lifestyle right away. Right away, he needs to change his lifestyle. Why? You can't live like a John Jones in a division where every inch of mistake can be detrimental to your victory. And that is the reality that he has to face. So that means he can't go out and binge eat the way that he does in between fights, gain all this weight, and then going through a fat camp only for him to somehow not concentrate on his skills, and he needs to train during his training camps. There's just a lot of things that he needs to change in order for him to step up in that next level, if he hasn't already. So that's what we got for UFC 304. The last thing I want to talk about for UFC 304 is the time differences. You see, the last time that the UFC was there, if you guys remember, Michael Bisping fought 3 a.m. in the morning. And what was his reason? Because the UFC wanted to sort of cater to the North American audience. 7 p.m. time slot for, let's say, the pay-per-views, which is 10 in the East Coast, 7 in the West, 10 in the East Coast, and somewhere in the middle of, let's say, the Midwest. You guys know the rest. So, in other words, they're trying to favor the American audience because guess what? Unlike anybody else around the world, we're out there to spend money on pay-per-views. Other parts of the world, they don't really spend money on pay-per-views. I think you don't have to spend pay-per-view for UK subscriptions such as TNT, BT Sport, or Sky Sports, or anything like that. So this is the reason why they set this time zone. And by the way, I got to be honest with you, I think this particular time zone would probably be more beneficial to Bilal Muhammad, considering that he had gone through Ramadan. And if you know anything about Ramadan, because of the fact that you are fasting all day and basically awake at night, I think that his So don't forget to like and subscribe is all that I have for you, considering the UFC 304 news and its announcement, but also the news of Tyson Fury and Alexander Usyk's presser. Watch from beginning to end. Don't forget to like and subscribe. And don't also forget to take a look at some of my past videos and some of my recent videos that I have on this particular channel. You guys don't want to miss out on that. I promise you, I will give you guys, as long as you watch and as long as you can subscribe, I'm going to give you the most objective takes that anyone in the MMA YouTube space can give you. That is one of the problems that we have right now. There's not a lot of people that are willing to give objective takes. They want to give their opinions. I can give you my opinions as well, and I'm going to tell you when I'm giving you my opinions. Opinions, to be quite honest with you, are very entertaining if you lean one way or the other, right? But what is important is also giving you facts. And I think the hardcore fan base enjoys that. I think they enjoy facts over fiction. They enjoy truth over sensationalism. But if I have my own opinion on certain things, I'm also going to make it as entertaining as possible with the most articulate way of explaining this crazy world of mixed martial arts. So once again, I'm going to end this stream at the 40-minute mark. And I urge you guys to hit that like button, like and subscribe, tell a friend to tell a friend, and inshallah, I will see you guys in the next content to come. Enjoy the ride and enjoy the fights.